The massive screen in the United Earth Defense Command Center displayed a sight that made every military officer hold their breath. 30 alien ships, each larger than the biggest human spacecraft ever built, had just appeared beyond Mars' orbit. Admiral James stood at the front of the room, his gray hair and weathered face reflecting decades of military service. His hands were clasped behind his back as he studied the readings. The ships weren't moving in an attack formation. They were simply waiting. "Ladies and gentlemen," he addressed the room of nervous officials, "it seems we're about to have our first official contact with an advanced alien civilization." The room erupted in whispers. Humans had wondered about alien life for centuries, but no one had expected them to arrive with such an overwhelming show of force. A young communications officer raised her hand. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. They're calling themselves the Stellar Council." "Put it through," Admiral James ordered, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered, revealing a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes and silvery markings across its face. Its voice came through the translator in a series of melodic tones. "People of Earth," the alien spoke, "we come bearing a gift, our most powerful weapon. Use it wisely." The military leaders exchanged worried glances. Was this some kind of trick? A test? Or worse, a trap? "That's unusual diplomatic protocol." Admiral James responded carefully. "May I ask why you're offering us a weapon?" The alien's upper eyes blinked. "Because you will need it. The swarm approaches your sector of space. We have chosen to give you a fighting chance." Before anyone could respond, a small transport pod launched from the alien flagship. It entered Earth's atmosphere, following a precise trajectory to land right outside the Defense Command building. A team of soldiers surrounded the pod, weapons ready. Admiral James and Dr. Lisa, the base's lead scientist, approached as the pod's door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a container about the size of a shoebox. The alien's voice came through their communicators. "Behold, the Devastator. Handle it with extreme caution." Dr. Lisa scanned the container. No radiation, no toxic materials, no explosives. Whatever's in there is alive. Admiral James nodded to a soldier who carefully opened the container. A small furry head poked out, followed by tiny paws. The creature looked like someone had combined a hamster with a kitten. It had soft, silver fur, large purple eyes, and small pointed ears. It was about the size of a guinea pig and made a gentle purring sound. "Oh my God," Dr. Lisa whispered, "it's adorable." The alien's voice crackled with what seemed like concern. "Please maintain safe distance. The Devastator is our most feared biological weapon." But Dr. Lisa was already reaching for the creature. Before anyone could stop her, the little animal hopped into her hands and nuzzled against her lab coat. It made a happy chirping sound. "It's so soft," she exclaimed, scratching behind its ears. The creature's purring grew louder. On the main screen, the alien representative's 4 eyes widened in horror. You're touching it. Without protection." Admiral James watched as the creature rolled over in Dr. Lisa's hands, clearly wanting belly rubs. "This is your most feared weapon. It has brought entire civilizations to their knees." The alien insisted. "Its capabilities are beyond measure." The creature was now making a sound remarkably similar to a giggle as Dr. Lisa continued petting it. Several other staff members had gathered around, all wanting to get a closer look at the supposedly terrifying weapon. "Well," Admiral James said, trying to maintain his professional composure despite wanting to pet the creature himself, "we thank the Stellar Council for this generous gift. We will begin studying its capabilities immediately." "Yes," Dr. Lisa added, already walking away with the creature snuggled in her arms. "Very thorough studies, starting with finding out what kind of treats it likes." The alien representative made a sound that their translators couldn't quite process. All 30 ships quickly retreated to a safe distance, leaving Earth's military leaders to wonder what exactly they had just received. and why anyone would be afraid of something so cute. What they didn't know yet was that this small, furry creature would soon prove to be more powerful than anyone imagined, just not in the way the aliens had intended. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Earth Defense Command's main laboratory, now filled with colorful cushions, toy balls, and climbing posts. In the center, Dr. Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Mr. Whiskers play with a small red ball. 3 computer screens behind her displayed different readings, each showing something more amazing than the last. Admiral James walked in, stopped, and stared at the scene before him. "Doctor, why is there a tiny sweater on our supposed superweapon?" "Oh, he got cold," Dr. Lisa replied, not looking up from her tablet. "But sir, you need to see these readings. Mr. Whiskers just did something incredible." She pointed to a damaged radiation sensor in the corner. The device had been broken for weeks, too dangerous to approach. But now it was working perfectly, its warning lights dark and quiet. "Watch this," she said, picking up Mr. Whiskers and walking toward another broken sensor. The creature's purple eyes glowed softly, and it made a happy chirping sound. Within seconds, the sensor's radiation levels dropped to 0. "It doesn't just block radiation," Dr. Lisa explained excitedly. "It eats it, like it's some kind of tasty snack." Admiral James rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "And the Stellar Council thinks this is a weapon of mass destruction." "Oh, that's not even the best part," Dr. Lisa said, placing Mr. Whiskers back on his favorite cushion. "Yesterday, I had one fuzzy friend. This morning," she pressed a button, and a camera feed showed another room where 3 identical creatures played with toy mice. "They multiply only when they're really happy," she explained. "And here's the weird thing. They seem to know exactly how many humans are around. They won't create more of themselves than there are people to care for them." Suddenly, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The blue-skinned alien representative appeared, all 4 eyes wide with panic. "What are you doing?" the alien demanded. "Our sensors detect the Devastator is loose in your facility. And is it wearing clothing?" "Just a sweater," Dr. Lisa replied cheerfully. He picked the color himself. The alien made a sound like a deflating balloon. "These are Class 5 biological weapons. They're not supposed to wear fashion accessories." Just then, Mr. Whiskers rolled onto his back, paws in the air, clearly asking for belly rubs. Dr. Lisa happily obliged, causing the alien to make several high-pitched sounds of distress. "You're deliberately activating its pleasure centers. Do you know what kind of power you're playing with?" "Actually, yes," Dr. Lisa said, pulling up her latest data. "When he's happy, he produces an energy field that cleans radiation, purifies air, and seems to make plants grow better. Watch this." She held up a small plant pot. Mr. Whiskers purred, and the tiny seedling suddenly grew 3 inches, sprouting healthy green leaves. The alien transmission cut off abruptly. "I think we scared them," Admiral James said, trying not to smile. "Sir," a young technician burst into the lab, "you need to see this." Someone posted a picture of Mr. Whiskers online. "The public is going crazy. Everyone wants one." They looked at the main screen, now showing crowds gathering outside research facilities worldwide. People held up signs reading, "We want alien pets," and "Make cuddles, not war." Dr. Lisa picked up Mr. Whiskers, who nuzzled happily against her lab coat. "I don't understand why anyone would look at this face and see a weapon of mass destruction." Just then, Mr. Whiskers hiccuped, and another identical creature appeared in a puff of silver light. "Oh," Dr. Lisa exclaimed. "This one has tiny white paws. I'm calling it socks." Admiral James watched as both creatures began purring in perfect harmony, creating a soft silver glow that made everyone in the room feel peaceful and happy. "Doctor," he said finally, "I think we need to reconsider our definition of weapon, and maybe our definition of power too." What they didn't know yet was that Mr. Whiskers and his growing family were just getting started. The emergency alarm blared through Earth Defense Command at 3 a.m. Admiral James rushed into the control room, still adjusting his uniform. The main screen showed chaos. The human colony on Mars was under attack. "Report," he ordered, watching strange, dark ships swarm around the red planet. "Sir, they just appeared out of nowhere," the night officer explained. "They're unlike anything we've seen before. They're not even responding to our signals." The attacking ships looked like giant black insects, their surfaces gleaming with an oily sheen. They moved in perfect coordination, surrounding the Mars colony's defensive shields. "Get me the Stellar Council," Admiral James commanded. For once, the alien representatives responded immediately. "The swarm has arrived," the blue-skinned alien announced without greeting. "This is why we gave you the Devastators. You have been keeping them, haven't you?" "If you mean Mr. Whiskers and his friends, they're all over Earth now," Admiral James replied. "There must be thousands of them." "Millions," Dr. Lisa corrected, hurrying into the room with a furry creature in her arms. "They've been multiplying steadily. Every happy human seems to attract one." The alien's four eyes widened. "Millions? And your people are still alive?" Before Admiral James could respond, one of the swarm ships broke through Mars' outer defenses. The colony's shields flickered. "We need to send help," Dr. Lisa exclaimed. "Those are our people up there." The Stellar Council representative leaned forward. "The Devastators. They're truly living among your population, being touched, being loved." "Of course," Dr. Lisa answered, confused. "They're wonderful companions. But right now we need—" "Send them," the alien interrupted. "Send your Devastators to Mars. The swarm, they fear them more than death itself." Admiral James frowned. "You want us to send our pets to fight?" "Watch," the alien said simply. Dr. Lisa looked down at the creature in her arms, one of Mr. Whiskers' many offspring. "Would you like to help save our friends on Mars?" she asked it gently. The creature's purple eyes seemed to glow. It made a determined chirping sound and suddenly vanished in a flash of silver light. Across Earth, millions of similar creatures perked up their ears. On the main screen, a new reading appeared near Mars. Then another, and another. Silver flashes of light popped up all around the red planet as Earth's beloved pets teleported into space. The swarm ships froze. Then, to everyone's amazement, they began to retreat. "Impossible," the alien whispered. "They're not just repelling the swarm, they're coordinating. How did you unlock this level of response?" Dr. Lisa watched as her furry friend reappeared in her arms, looking quite pleased with itself. "We didn't do anything special. We just love them." "That's it," the alien exclaimed. "For centuries, our civilizations kept them in containment, treated them as weapons, feared their power. But you treated them with affection. You gave them names. You let them sleep in your beds." On the screen, the swarm ships were now in full retreat. The creatures had formed a protective barrier around Mars, their combined energy fields creating patterns of beautiful, shifting light. "But why does the swarm fear them so much?" Admiral James asked. The alien representative seemed to slump. "The swarm operates on pure logic, pure efficiency. These creatures, they operate on love, on bonds that the swarm cannot understand or combat. To the swarm, they are chaos incarnate." Dr. Lisa scratched her furry friend under its chin. "So by just being ourselves, by treating them as pets instead of weapons, we made them more powerful than anyone else ever has." "Indeed," the alien agreed. "And now I fear we must reconsider everything we thought we knew about power and about humans." As if to emphasize the point, all the creatures around Mars suddenly coordinated their purring. The combined frequency created a shield so strong it could be seen from Earth, in the shape of a perfect heart. The swarm never stood a chance against weapons that ran on cuddles. The swarm wasn't giving up easily. After their defeat at Mars, they regrouped and set their sights on a bigger target, Earth. The massive black ships darkened the skies over every major city, their presence blocking out the sun. In New York's Central Park, something unexpected was happening. Instead of running in panic, people were calmly sitting on benches and lawn chairs, each with a furry companion in their lap. Similar scenes played out in parks and squares worldwide. Admiral James watched from the command center as Dr. Lisa rushed in with her latest findings. "Sir, you need to see this. The creatures. They're not just cute, they're preparing." On her tablet, readings showed thousands of the furry animals all purring at exactly the same frequency. More surprisingly, their human companions were humming along without realizing it. Every time humans pet them, their power grows, Dr. Lisa explained. It's like they're charging up on affection. The first swarm ship launched its attack on Tokyo, but instead of finding a defenseless city, they encountered something that made their neural networks short-circuit. Hundreds of humans standing on rooftops, each holding what the swarm considered to be the most terrifying force in the universe, and making baby talk at it. "Who's gonna help save Earth?" "You are." "Yes, you are." A young woman cooed at her creature, which was wearing a tiny bow tie. The swarm ships actually backed up. In London, an old man was sharing his tea with his furry companion. In Rio, children were playing catch with their floating pets. In Cairo, a group of teenagers had organized a pet fashion show right in the middle of the alien invasion. The swarm's ships are showing signs of confusion, a technician reported. Their attack patterns are becoming erratic. Dr. Lisa pointed to her readings. "Look at this. When the creatures purr, they emit a frequency that completely disrupts the swarm's neural patterns, and the frequency gets stronger when they're happy." Admiral James watched as a swarm ship tried to fire at Moscow, only to have its weapons dissolve in a wave of silver light generated by a group of creatures that had formed a heart shape in the sky. "Sir," Dr. Lisa said, excitement in her voice, "I don't think these beings were ever meant to be weapons of destruction. They're weapons of protection. They don't fight with force, they fight with love." As if to prove her point, Mr. Whiskers, the original creature, appeared on the command center's main console. He looked at the screens showing the swarm ships, then at Admiral James, and made a determined little chirp. "I think," Admiral James said slowly, "he's asking for permission to coordinate Earth's defense." Mr. Whiskers nodded, his purple eyes glowing with intelligence. "Very well, Commander Whiskers," Admiral James said with a slight smile. "The defense of Earth is in your paws." Mr. Whiskers stood up on his hind legs and made a sound that somehow reached every one of his kind on Earth. In perfect synchronization, all the creatures began to purr. The sound started soft, but grew until it filled the air. Humans found themselves feeling peaceful, happy, and safe. The swarm, on the other hand, found their worst nightmare. Their logical, ordered minds couldn't handle the pure emotion being broadcast at them. "Look," Dr. Lisa pointed at her screens. "The purring is creating some kind of emotional force field around Earth." Indeed, a shimmering barrier of silver light was forming in the atmosphere, powered by millions of happy pets and their loving humans. The swarm ships that touched it didn't explode or break. They simply backed away, their crews overwhelmed by feelings they couldn't process. Admiral James watched in amazement as Mr. Whiskers coordinated the defense of an entire planet while simultaneously demanding belly rubs. "Doctor," he said, "I think we need to create a new military division." "Sir?" "The Cuddle Corps. Because somehow, humanity's greatest defense turned out to be our ability to love even the things we're told to fear." Mr. Whiskers purred in approval, and somewhere in the galaxy, the Stellar Council was beginning to realize they might have seriously underestimated humanity's greatest power, their capacity for love. The Stellar Council's observation fleet hung in space, all 40 ships now watching Earth with their most sensitive instruments. What they saw defied everything they had known about warfare and power. Inside the lead ship, the blue-skinned representative paced nervously. Impossible. The creature's power readings are off our scales, but they're not destroying anything. On Earth, Dr. Lisa worked furiously at her computer, tracking the incredible changes happening around the planet. The creatures, now officially named stellar companions, in Earth's scientific database, were evolving in ways nobody had expected. "Admiral," she called out, "you need to see these readings. The more time they spend with humans, the more powerful they become. But it's not just raw power. It's something else entirely." Admiral James walked over to her station, Mr. Whiskers perched on his shoulder like a furry epaulet. The creature had refused to leave his side since taking command of Earth's defense. "Look at this," Dr. Lisa pointed to her screen. "When a human shows love to one of the creatures, it creates a kind of emotional energy. And they're all linking together, sharing it. Around the world, the evidence was clear. In hospitals, the creatures were helping patients heal faster. In areas of conflict, their presence brought calm and understanding. Plants grew better, the air became cleaner, and even the weather seemed to improve wherever they went. The swarm ships still hovering at the edge of the solar system were broadcasting signals of complete confusion. Their logical minds couldn't process what they were seeing. A young girl in a park hugged her furry companion, and the creature's pure joy created a visible wave of silver light that spread out for miles. Similar scenes played out across the globe, each display of affection adding to Earth's growing protective field. "The aliens were right about one thing," Dr. Lisa said, checking her instruments. "These are the most powerful beings we've ever encountered. But their power doesn't come from fear or destruction. It comes from love." In the command center, alarms suddenly began to ring. The swarm was making one final desperate push. Thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace, more than anyone had ever seen in one place. Mr. Whiskers stood up on Admiral James's shoulder and made a soft chirping sound. Across the planet, every stellar companion responded. "What are they doing?" Admiral James asked, watching as silver light began to pulse from every creature on Earth. Dr. Lisa's eyes widened as she read her instruments. They're synchronizing every happy moment, every display of affection they've experienced with humans. They're combining it all into one massive field. The Stellar Council representative's voice came through the communications system, filled with awe. "This is beyond anything we imagined possible. The power readings, they're creating something new." Around Earth, a new kind of shield formed. Unlike the mechanical barriers humans had built, this one shimmered with colors that seemed to represent every positive emotion humans could feel. Love, joy, hope, friendship, all made visible in swirling patterns of light. When the swarm fired their weapons, something remarkable happened. The shots didn't bounce off or explode against the shield. They simply transformed into harmless sparkles of light, like gentle fireworks. "The creatures aren't just defending us," Dr. Lisa realized. "They're transforming hostile energy into positive energy." Mr. Whiskers purred loudly, and the shield pulsed brighter. Across Earth, millions of his kind joined in, their combined purring creating a symphony of protection that resonated through space itself. The swarm ships began to retreat, their logical weaponry useless against the pure emotional energy being directed at them. Some of their sensors seemed to be overloading from exposure to too many positive feelings at once. Admiral James reached up to scratch Mr. Whiskers behind the ears. "Well done, Commander." The creature responded by nuzzling his hand, and another wave of protective light rippled out from Earth. In that moment, everyone watching realized a profound truth. The greatest power in the universe wasn't in weapons of destruction, but in the simple act of loving and being loved in return. The Stellar Council had given Earth a weapon, but humans had turned it into something far more powerful. They had turned it into family. The newly formed Cuddle Court headquarters buzzed with activity. Screens showed thousands of humans in matching blue uniforms, each paired with their own stellar companion. They had spent weeks training, though most of the training involved playing games and strengthening their emotional bonds. Admiral James stood at the main command station, reviewing reports with Mr. Whiskers still perched on his shoulder. The creature wore a tiny uniform with a commander's insignia, which had started as a joke but somehow became official. "Sir," a young officer burst into the room. "The swarm, they're back. But this time they've brought their entire fleet." The main screen lit up with countless black ships, so many they looked like a dark cloud approaching Earth. This was different from their previous attacks. This was their full strength, their final push. "They're transmitting a message," Dr. Lisa announced, her own stellar companion, Spots, sitting alert in her lap. "Playing it now." A harsh, mechanical voice filled the room. "Your emotional weapons cannot defend against our entire species. Surrender now." Admiral James looked at Mr. Whiskers. "Well, Commander, what's your tactical assessment?" Mr. Whiskers stood up, his purple eyes glowing with determination. He made a series of chirps that everyone somehow understood perfectly. It was time to show the swarm what the Cuddle Corps could really do. "All units," Admiral James announced into the global communication system, "initiate Operation Snuggle." Around the world, Cuddle Corps members moved into position. Each human companion pair took their place, creating a network that covered the entire planet. "The swarm is launching their first wave," Dr. Lisa reported, watching the readings. "They've adapted their weapons to try to penetrate our emotional shield." But something unexpected happened. As the swarm opened fire, each Cuddle Corps member did something that made the alien attackers' neural networks crash in confusion. They started baby-talking to their companions. "Who's gonna help save Earth?" "You are." "Yes, you are. You adorable little defender." "Want a treat after we stop the mean old swarm?" "Of course you do. Look at you in your little uniform. Aren't you the bravest little fluffball?" Each phrase of baby talk made the creature's power grow stronger. The Stellar Council observers reported that their instruments couldn't even measure the energy levels anymore. Mr. Whiskers coordinated it all, his tiny paws moving as he directed the planet's defense. The other creatures responded to his commands, their combined purring creating complex patterns of protective energy. The swarm fired their strongest weapons, planet-destroying beams that had wiped out other civilizations, but when they hit Earth's shield of pure love and affection, they transformed into beautiful auroras that danced across the sky. "Look at these readings," Dr. Lisa exclaimed. "The creatures aren't just defending us anymore. They're reaching out to the swarm, trying to share positive emotions with them." Indeed, some of the swarm ships closest to Earth began to show strange behavior. Their rigid, geometric formations started to wobble as their crews experienced emotions for the first time. Mr. Whiskers stood tall and made one final powerful chirp. Every stellar companion on Earth responded, and together they created something never seen before, a wave of pure joy that swept through space. The swarm ships that were hit didn't explode or break apart. Instead, they just stopped. Their crews, for the first time in their species' history, felt happiness. They're retreating," the young officer announced. "No, wait. They're not retreating. They're dancing." Indeed, the swarm ships had begun to move in graceful swirls and loops, like they were trying to join in the celebration of life that Earth was broadcasting into space. Admiral James watched in amazement as humanity's greatest threat was transformed not by weapons of war, but by the simple power of shared joy. "Doctor," he said, scratching Mr. Whiskers under the chin, "I believe we just witnessed the greatest victory in military history. The day we didn't destroy our enemy, but made them our friends instead." Mr. Whiskers purred in agreement, and across the galaxy, word began to spread about the species that had turned the universe's most feared weapons into beloved pets, and in doing so, had changed the very nature of power itself. 1 month after the swarm's transformation, the Grand Hall of the Stellar Council hosted an event unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from every known species gathered to witness Earth's formal recognition as a major galactic power. Admiral James stood at the podium, Mr. Whiskers sitting proudly beside him in his now famous tiny commander's uniform. Dr. Lisa sat in the front row with Spots, surrounded by other human representatives and their stellar companions. The blue-skinned Stellar Council leader approached the podium, all four eyes blinking in what had been learned was a sign of respect. In all our history, the council leader began, we never understood the true nature of the beings we called devastators. For millennia, we kept them in containment, feared their power, and used them as weapons of war. It took humanity, our youngest galactic neighbors, to show us what we had missed. Dr. Lisa stood up next, sharing her research findings with the assembled aliens. Behind her, a large screen showed images of the creature's cellular structure. These beings were never weapons, she explained. They're empathic entities that reflect and amplify the dominant emotions around them. When treated with fear, they created fear. But when given love, she paused to scratch Spots behind the ears, causing a wave of happy silver light to ripple through the hall. They create something beautiful. The most surprising delegation at the ceremony was from the swarm. Their ships, once pitch black, now sparkled with traces of silver light. Their representative, speaking through a translator, addressed the gathering. We lived in pure logic, rejecting all emotion as weakness, the swarm leader said. The humans and their companions showed us what we had been missing. Our species has experienced joy for the first time, and we choose never to return to our old ways. Mr. Whiskers stood up and made a series of happy chirps. Throughout the hall, every creature responded, creating a harmonious melody that filled all present with a sense of peace and happiness. Admiral James smiled. On behalf of Earth, we would like to propose a new initiative. We call it the Universal Pet Adoption Program. The hall erupted in excited murmurs. Many alien species had already been sending requests, hoping to experience the same bonds that humans had formed with the creatures. But Admiral James continued, there are conditions. These beings are not weapons or tools. They are family. Each adoption must be based on love and respect. The Stellar Council leader stepped forward again. We agree to these terms, and we formally apologize to both humanity and the beings we misunderstood for so long. What name have you given their species? Dr. Lisa stood up again. After much research and consultation with them, we learned they call themselves joy givers in their own form of communication. Though on Earth, most people still just call them sweethearts or fuzzballs. As if to demonstrate, Mr. Whiskers hopped down from the podium and began moving through the crowd of aliens. Wherever he went, species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves feeling friendship toward each other. This is their true power, Admiral James explained, not to destroy or conquer, but to unite and heal. In the following weeks, the Joy Givers began choosing new companions among the various alien species. The swarm transformed their battle fleets into adoption centers. The Stellar Council reorganized its military division into a pet care and training facility. Back on Earth, at the Cuddle Court headquarters, Admiral James and Dr. Lisa watched the latest reports coming in from across the galaxy. You know, Dr. Lisa said, petting Spots, when they gave us their greatest weapon, they never expected us to change the meaning of power itself. Admiral James nodded, watching Mr. Whiskers play with a ball of light. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in destroying what we fear, but in loving what we don't understand. Outside, the sun set on a changed Earth, where every home had a furry guardian, and every heart had learned that love wasn't just an emotion. It was the most powerful force in the universe. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, countless beings of all species were learning what humans had known from the start. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't the ones that inspire fear, but the ones that inspire love. The end.